Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jarrell Mason, aka Jay Mason. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. With me right now, I have a man who I met back in the day at our alma mater, University of North Carolina at Greensboro, aka UNC-G, aka Fear the G, aka HBCU adjacent, because you know we're right there by A&T in Winston-Salem State. Author, father, all that and more, my guy, Brady Moore, no pun intended. Brady, thank you for coming on Beyond the Album Cover, bro, and it's a pleasure to have you on, man.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Man, I appreciate you just taking the time out of your day, man. Just real curious to know, have you been back to G since you graduated?
Yeah. I was actually there last year for homecoming, and it was a homecoming unlike any homecoming in G history. It was you would have sworn it was a HBCU, man. It was a lot of people that that went to school around that '05 to 2010 range that came back, so it was definitely love, man. We had an amazing time.
Yeah, I saw the pictures on the socials and it looked like it was a time everybody was outside. It felt like mini G-Ho.
Yeah, no, most definitely.
Yeah, and then of course I know your boys was up in the building, your organization, shout out your org.
Shout out to Alpha Phi Alpha, the Positive chapter. Good to see my boys back on the yard last year. Chapter's still going strong. So yeah, shout out to those guys.
All right, so let's just jump right into it, man. Were you born and raised in Charlotte, or were you born somewhere else and then ended up being raised in the Queen City?
Nope, born and raised. Lived all over Charlotte. Came back after graduation, and yeah, I love this city, man. It's been home, and family's still here, so definitely always been home for me.
Now, for me, I'm from the 252 side of the state, so I never really spent time in 704 like that, and didn't really meet a lot of you all from the 704 until I got to G, and that was when I realized, okay, 704 is something serious when it comes to the athletics and hoops and in football. The closest I kind of came to knowing about 704 football was when Independence was making its run in the early 2000s with Chris Leak and those boys.
Yes, sir. Proud alum of Independence High School too, man. So yeah, I went there, and they did not lose while I was in high school. So definitely a fun thing to be a part of. I probably missed maybe 3 or 4 games my entire 4 years there. So got to see the dynasty from Chris Leak to Joe Cox, and then Daryl McFadden, DJ McFadden, who's the head coach now, and they're doing big things. They won last night, so shout out to Indy, man. Still doing going strong in high school football.
So was it that you think it is about the Queen City area where it's in that same echelon with talent out of the Triangle and also out of the Triad?
I think they do a great job of hiring great coaches. They really do. I mean, when Tommy Knox was over at Independence, he did great things, and he came from West Charlotte before that, and then was at Harding before that. So there's been a great pedigree of coaches that have come through Queen City. There's some schools that have kind of sprouted up since I graduated, Mallard Creek, Huff, that are doing great things as well. So yeah, man, there's a lot of just really good coaches, and Charlotte's a lot of transplants come through. So we get a lot of people who didn't necessarily grow up here, but they come to Charlotte right around middle school, and then kind of get brought up into the DMS system. So we get a lot of players from around the country, but I think the number one thing is the programs have the right people in place to be successful.
Yeah, you mentioned transplants coming to Charlotte. A lot of the major financial banking sectors have headquarters in Charlotte, and recently the ACC
Yeah.
moved headquarters from Greensboro to Charlotte. And what was it like for you seeing Charlotte grow from being a small, sleepy southern city to when the Hornets came into the league and then the Panthers followed suit in '95?
You've definitely seen a lot of growth in the city. I mean, it's like they're always building, they're always expanding. It's grown so much just since I was in high school. I mean, there's 3 other high schools in my area that didn't exist when I was in high school, and you're seeing just a lot of people just kind of come back and start families here, and so yeah, the city's always growing, man. It's been just crazy to see just the impact of the growth financially of the city, but also the Hornets coming back and having the Carolina Panthers plays into it as well. It's just a great city, man. There's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of great art districts and some great scenes for people to kind of just come here and really kind of lay some roots here. So that's definitely why I always felt comfortable coming back. You know, I'm not opposed to leaving, but it's been home and I've always loved being in Charlotte.
Yeah, so let's explain it to the young kids out there. I mean, we the unks now, but when the Hornets came into the league, they set the NBA on fire, selling out every home game over at the Hive, the old spots where they used to be at, and of course, the infamous starter jacket. Even folks who wasn't from NC, you had that Hornet starter jacket. And then, of course, when the Hornets had the All-Star game a couple years back, J. Cole from Fayetteville had to show love and pop out with that starters jacket. And of course, the Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning, Muggsy Bogues jerseys, Dale Curry jersey, and of course, little Steph was right in the bowels of the arena getting his shots up before he became the greatest shooter of all time. So what was it like seeing the Hornets rise to popularity in the league in the 90s, and like how you mentioned, they're back in the league now, and hopefully they can kind of recapture those glory days of the 90s and early 2000s before Baron Davis really got hurt.
Yeah, Charlotte, like the Hornets represent Charlotte more than I think any other organization, man. I think uh, I've always had a deep love for the Charlotte Hornets. That's my NBA team. You know, win or lose, bad season, good season. You know, they became a team in 1988, which is when I was born. So, like, the Hornets have always been a special place in my heart. And the first professional sporting event I ever went to was at the old Hive. And you know, I still have so many fond memories of my dad taking me there, me and my brother, and I had the posters up in my room of the original Charlotte Hornets roster, and you know, Muggsy Bogues, you mentioned them, you know, Alonzo Mourning, Glenn Rice, Larry Johnson, and we had so many great players come through, and we have some great success. You know, we just had to run to some guy named Michael Jordan in the playoffs in the '90s that kind of kept us from going to the Eastern Conference Finals, but then even after that, when we had Baron Davis and Jamal Mashburn and David Wesley, those were some great teams too. And it really hurt when we lost the Hornets, man. That was like it
Mm-hmm.
was like a rib being pulled out. Like that was one of the worst times as a sports fan for me because that was such a beloved franchise. And then when Bob Johnson brought in the Bobcats, it just never really felt right. You
Mm-hmm.
know, even the team colors like orange, it don't really feel like Charlotte.
Mm-mm.
And Michael Jordan gets a lot of criticism for the lack of success when he was the owner, but bringing back the Hornets name was such an impactful thing for this city. I was in the building opening night, the first game back as the Charlotte Hornets. Packed out gym. They came back from I think like 20 points down against the Milwaukee Bucks. Young Giannis on that team, and Kemba Walker hit a crazy three-pointer to send it into overtime. Won the game in overtime, and you would have thought we won the NBA Finals because the city was so alive. Downtown Charlotte was going crazy. It was just an amazing thing to see because that team just means so much to this city, and so that's why, man, Charlotte more than any other franchise that I've kind of known fan bases of, they really really just embrace special talents and teams here. Like we love Kemba Walker. We only made the playoffs twice when Kemba was here, but he was right there up with the Cam Newtons of the world when it comes to this city and how much we embraced and love him because he played most of his career here. He did leave towards the end, but he always wanted to be here. He always embraced Charlotte, and that's why we're rooting for the Lonzo Balls of the world because when Charlotte is winning, this city is just so much more alive, and we really really care about our sports team.
Yeah, I know Charlotte was up when they took the summer league title out in Vegas, man. It ain't a championship,
Exactly.
but we'll take it.
Exactly. Hey, we've been starving for a long time, so we were just happy to see something. It don't matter what kind of champion you put by it, listen, man, you look at the numbers. Like the Hornets still sell. Like the stadium is packed out, even when we're at the bottom of the standings, because these people in this city really really care about this team. And so when the Hornets do become a contender, you're gonna feel it. And I don't think anybody in this city would would be more excited to see the Hornets be great.
And Hornets infamous in other ways where they drafted Kobe Bryant and SGA, and both of them ended up
Now
getting traded.
hold
Go
on.
ahead,
So
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
because the way we get so much heat for passing on Kobe Bryant, passing on SGA, but the way the NBA draft works, because it's right before the actual start of the new league year, you can't trade picks during the draft. So
Mm,
what happens is you trade the pick, and it's not official yet. So you have to draft whoever the other team that you traded with wants to draft. So
okay.
we had already traded the pick with the Lakers.
Mm.
So and they told us to draft Kobe Bryant.
So you're pretty much
So we
picking
didn't
for him.
necessarily pass on Kobe Bryant any more than the other teams that drafted ahead of us passed on Kobe Bryant.
Mm,
So if we don't get heat for not picking Kobe Bryant, so should every other team that drafted ahead of us. We weren't picking number one.
right.
Same thing with SGA and taking Miles Bridges. Like we had already agreed to terms to make the trade.
Mm.
But obviously if we would have known what Kobe Bryant was gonna be, we would have stayed right there and probably taken him with that pick.
Yeah, because I think it was where once Kobe found out, like, okay, Charlotte's looking at you, he's like, nah, I don't want to go to Charlotte. And then when
Yeah,
Jerry West,
Kobe didn't want to be. Kobe
yeah,
didn't want to be. Kobe was born to be a Laker, man.
yeah, he had that Laker mystique. And of course, once Jerry West saw the workout, he was like, I saw all I need to see. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and bake that cake. Now, switching gears real quick. Was UNCG your first choice in going to college, or did you have other schools on your radar before deciding on UNCG?
I did have other schools on my radar. I went to school for media studies, broadcasting. Originally wanted to do kind of newspaper journalism, but newspaper was kind of dying out at that point. Um, Dabbled in radio, but UNCG was always school that was on my radar. I was in DECA when I was in high school, and we took a trip up to Greensboro for like a conference my junior year of high school, and we toured the
Mm,
Greensboro campus as well. And I fell in love with the campus. It's just an amazing campus. It's expanded so much since we were there, but it's a beautiful campus. It's got a great sense of diversity. You know, like you said, HBCU adjacent. Like you go to UNCG, man, it's not like your typical PWI where you feel like a small person, on the map. It's got an incredible minority community, and one of the things I loved most about going to G was like it felt like the African American students there were just all kind of in lock and step. It was just so much love between the African American students at UNCG to the point where like when you come back for homecoming, it's like you're seeing family. Like you really felt like you knew kind of everybody when you were
mm,
there, even though you
mm.
still had a larger community of African American students. So yeah, man, UNCG is just such a diverse campus, and so it was kind of always my favorite choice. I grew up a huge UNC fan. My parents both went to Chapel Hill. Graduated from Chapel Hill. My mom was a senior when they won the '82 national championship with Jordan. So like UNC basketball has been like ingrained in my veins since I could walk. But I didn't want to go to a school that big, where you got auditorium sized classrooms on a regular basis. I just kind of wanted to go to an environment that was a little bit more close knit. I felt like that was going to be a better environment for my education.
Mm.
So that's why UNCG always felt like a great fit, and it wasn't too far from home. I looked at some other schools, Georgia State, um, Wake Forest was another school that I looked at. Schools that had some really good programs, but UNCG felt like a great proximity to home and not having too large of a campus size where I felt like I was just going to be a statistic or a number, and that I could really interact with my professors and get a great hands-on relationship and education.
Yeah, pretty much your reasoning for going to G was my same reasoning for going to G. UNCG wasn't actually on my radar until I did Upward Bound my sophomore year. And actually, the guy giving the campus tour was an alum of my former high school, which is no longer in existence. And I was so right then and there, like, this is where I want to go. So I ended up applying to UNCG, A&T, Winston-Salem State. East Carolina was four, but I didn't apply at that point because I already got accepted in the UNCG at that point. So it was like once UNCG said yes, I put pen to paper and was ready to go to SOAR, man. But SOAR, for those of you that don't know, if you are a youngin and is currently at UNCG, SOAR was a time. It was a time to be alive. It was freshman orientation. You got to size up everybody, see who's there, and especially at the dance at the Cone Ballroom. You remember them dances like Stacy from the
Yes,
Wood,
sir.
especially when the DJ's
That
like,
really sold me.
yes, sir. Like
Yeah,
252
that
in the
sold me on
building.
it, man. Like I I was like, because there wasn't. I think it was maybe like one or two guys that came from Independence that went to UNC-G, but there wasn't a lot of. There's a lot more women that came from my high school that went to UNC-G. So I had to, I had to branch out, and I'm an introvert by nature, but I had to branch out, and SOAR was really just kind of that jumping off point where I was like, yeah, I've definitely found my home.
Yeah, man. And it kind of makes you think with the young kids now, do kids really go outside like we did back in the day? Because think about it, when we were in college, we were kind of like at the tail end of where we had the old rim or analog, and this was when social media was in its infancy. Facebook was just popping off, and it was where you can enjoy being outside without really putting your business full out on the streets like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, Instagram kind of came along like maybe my senior year of college, but like Facebook and even Twitter wasn't really jumping off like that early on. It was mainly just Facebook, and it was a lot less than it is now. So social media was kind of out there, but people really look to social interaction. Even going to the club, man. Like I have a lot of younger coworkers, and we went out for one of my coworkers' birthday, and went to a little spot in downtown Charlotte, and like the vibes are just not the same, man. Like people are on their phones, people taking selfies, like nobody's really like vibing like they used to, man. It's just not the same atmosphere. But I mean, that's just the times changed a little bit. Social media is kind of the new thing for high school and college students, man. But
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's still,
man.
going back to homecoming, there's still a lot of people that love to hang out. I think the kickbacks are still the thing, and that's one of the things that I love when I was in college. Not
Mm,
necessarily the club, but just going to somebody's crib and everybody just hanging out, listening to music,
mm.
and enjoying just enjoying uh that kind of small knit group. That's still a thing. So
Oh
that's good to
yeah.
see.
Oh yeah, the house parties is still it. On the few times where I went outside, I went to a couple of house parties, maybe went to a few night spots on somebody's Thursday night, maybe Alexander Devereaux's or Lodi's or In Club. Catch that heat bus if you know you know. And some of y'all probably went out on a Thursday night, still with the wristband, a little sloshed for your 8 a.m. Friday class.
I had an 8 a.m. Friday class my first semester freshman year, and I was like, never again. That's not a good. It's not a good idea, man. So I learned pretty quickly that that just wasn't gonna be something that I could vibe with and I could be successful doing.
Nah, man, I think college teaches you how to have fun being broke. Because, I mean, if you ain't had the money outright to pay for it, you had to wait on that refund check and you had to make that refund check stretch. Because I remember a couple of times going to my mailbox in the atrium looking like, oh, is that check in there? Brr, 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 brr. Go to the ATM, hit that deposit. I'm going to Chili's up by Four Seasons tonight.
Yeah, man. I mean, and college teaches you a lot of things. Like that's one of the reasons I felt like UNCG was a great fit because it really college is where you're gonna figure out how much you really want to learn because you don't have your parents there telling you to go to class. A lot of classes don't take attendance, so like you got to be self motivated and you got to really learn to balance being outside and getting your education and working hard. And I think that's why so many well-rounded people are people who graduated college because that's where you really get a lot of your discipline from.
hmm Now, do you think with us not having a football team kind of makes the college experience feel a little bit cheapened since UNCG doesn't have a football team that we didn't have that feel of going on a game on a Saturday afternoon and tailgating, sitting in the stands, and just really having that full-on experience like other schools with football teams?
Yeah, I definitely feel a little bit of that, man. Especially when it came to homecoming, because homecoming, like when we were there, it wasn't a thing like that. It was more so like the communities outside of G that we're still in the Greensboro area. They would come back with bring their families and have little things on campus like that, but it really wasn't like a party. And I think a football team definitely would have helped that. And because Independence was so good when I was in high school, I didn't miss out. I didn't really feel like I was missing out on a whole lot, but not having a football team in college. But you know, we still found ways to have fun on the weekends, and the people who didn't go home on the weekends, you know, we still had, kickbacks and things like that we were able to kind of pass the time. But definitely, if we would have had a football team, uh, it definitely would have added to the experience.
Yeah, and then of course out by the fountain when the weather got warm, it felt like a mix of MTV Spring Break and BET Spring Bling. You got the beaches, the towels, everybody just sitting outside, just chilling, doing their thing. And of course, you know how most of the black population at UNC-G is out in the building is when it's somebody's probate and when it's basketball season. Those two things right there, probate and basketball season.
Yep, yep, we're gonna be out deep.
Yes.
You're gonna have the whole fountain area gonna be covered with people, man. It was,
Did
and I didn't. The first time I experienced the first probate I ever went to was actually the AKA probate, fall 2007. And shout out to all of them, and still a lot of them are some of my close friends. So that was the first probate I ever went to, and it was amazing. It was the closest thing you'll get to being at an HBCU when you're at G. But it's a great experience. It's all love out there. People are having a great time, and it's great to see people kind of find ways to have a party in
mm,
college beyond just going out to the club.
mm. And what was it like for you being on that other side of the coin when you crossed Alpha Phi Alpha and at your probate and you saw everybody out there cheering for you, rooting for you, and just knowing that, oh, my status on campus just went up real big.
I didn't even my probate actually being there was like a blur. It was so much that goes into it, man. It was just like my parents were like right in front of me, and at no point in time did I even know they were there. I felt the energy, the entire time, but like we were so locked in that it was kind of a blur. It's actually more fun when it's for the lines that came after me. It's actually more fun when you have a line coming through and it's their probate than it is for your own. But
Hmm.
yeah, definitely still a incredible experience. I wish we were in school when everybody had camera phones because nowadays everybody's got a video of their probate. I think we got some grainy footage here and there from Facebook and YouTube here and there, but the whole probate is kind of all just in memory now.
Yeah, because when you look at videos of other schools and their rollout videos and all that, it's like a full-on production.
Yeah, no, like there are actual people who, and photography and videography is such a huge thing now. So you have people who literally, you know, make movies of people's probate. So I wish we would have had that when we were in school because that definitely would have been pretty epic to go back and watch.
Yeah, that really would have been fire, for you guys. And also, we could say too that we had the honor of seeing the chef cook before going to the league. This was back when Davidson was still in the Southern Conference, and a little guy, number 30, scrawny, looked like
Yeah,
he was on JV. Steph Curry. I mean, he looked like a little boy, but his range was full grown. So, what was it like
yeah,
seeing him at Davidson torch us? And then seeing him make that run in NCAA tournament to where he is now the greatest shooter in NBA history.
yeah. I mean, I think everybody who went to G, when Steph Curry was at Davidson, kind of feels like we were in on the secret before everybody else was. Like before he had the run in the NCAA tournament and they beat Gonzaga and had that great run to the Elite Eight. We already knew who Steph was because he was, putting 30 on our heads, and we could see then that this dude was different. And I don't think anybody who watched Steph Curry before he blew up was shocked, when he went to the NBA and that success transition because he was a small guy in college. You know what I'm saying? Like they underestimated him because of his size, but man, he's just a different beast, man. His game is so incredible when you watch him play and the effort he puts in just to get open, his handle, all of that beyond just his shooting ability, man. He's a generational player, and so it's really cool to kind of even though it came at our expense, it was still crazy to just see a player like that and see a player like that at before he blew up, man. It really feels like you're kind of part of his story, and him also being from Charlotte and being the son of a Charlotte Hornets legend. it just kind of makes us feel like he's, kind of we're kind of part of that kind of legacy. Like Steph Curry ain't never been a Charlotte Hornet. He's always been a Golden State Warrior. He never went to UNC-G, but I think I've never ran into a person from Charlotte or from G who doesn't love Steph Curry.
Yeah,
Like we love that dude. Like he played for the Charlotte Hornets, like he played, you know, for UNC-G because he's just such a talented player, and we've seen him come up.
yeah, good dude. And I remember after that one game where he torched us, Dale and his mom was at the game. I remember shaking Dale's hand saying, heck of a ball player you got there. And that was right before he made that NCAA tournament run in '08 where he lost to, I believe was it Kansas or Gonzaga in that Elite Eight game?
They they beat Gonzaga because that was the team that Adam Morrison was on,
Mm.
and they lost to Kansas in the Elite Eight.
Okay, okay. Yeah, and speaking of NBA with Steph, LeBron, KD being long in the tooth and almost we're seeing the final chapter of their careers, where do you see who's going to take that torch once those guys phase out? And it kind of feels like we have a collection of young guys from Ant-Man to SGA to Giannis to Tatum and Halliburton. I think he really put himself in that category after what he did in the playoff run, despite getting his ACL torn in the finals. Where do you see the NBA going, and who's going to be that face or the faces of the league once LeBron, KD, and Steph phase out?
It's an interesting question, man, because right now we're really in the golden age of international players. I mean, best players in the NBA, they're all from other countries. I mean, Jokic, Giannis, Luca, you know, even SGA is from Canada. So it's like, who's gonna be that guy? I mean, Ant, you kind of see little moments with Ant, but he's not quite there yet. So it's a big question. I think the 2028 Olympics, it's going to be a real question about whether we can win gold because who's going to take those reins? And Jason Tatum, you kind of see it sometimes. Ant, you see it sometimes, but who's going to actually be that guy who really kind of puts the NBA on his back? It's going to be interesting to see because, like I said, man, right now the international guys got the game on lock, and Luka's not going anywhere. Jokic is still in his prime. He's an amazing player. SGA's just now hitting his prime. So it's gonna be interesting to see. You got some young cats now coming into the league, Cooper Flag. You know, so we're really gonna get to see. But one of the interesting things about the NBA now is that we're coming out of that super team era.
Mm,
So now there's a lot more parity in the league. I think this is the longest stretch without a repeat champion.
mm,
So you're really now seeing a lot more parity in the league. And so I don't know if there is going to be a singular face of the NBA for a long time
mm.
until Cooper Flag, he's a Dookie, so he's not my guy, but you can't deny his game. He's a talented player, but he had a great team around him at Duke, and he's got an interesting game to him, but we're gonna see if he's a force multiplier because that's what the Michaels and the Kobe's and the LeBrons, that's what they had. Like they galvanized the players around them and they could put teams on their back. And we haven't really seen that consistently from any American-born player in a long time.
Yeah, and NBA is going to be really interesting this year with OKC defending their title. What's it going to be like for them being the 100? You got LeBron and Luca a full off season, and as you see in the photos, Luca looked like he done been on the Biggest Loser or Camp Hope at heavyweights, slimmed down, got with LeBron's folks. Then you're gonna have a healthy Denver with Joker, Murray. You got the Clippers, of course, with Harden and CP3. NC Native is back with the Clippers, and it's just gonna be interesting. And in the East, it's wide open because Tatum's recovering from his ACL, Halliburton recovering from his ACL. So it's to me in the East, it feel like it's Knicks and Cavs. And if the Knicks were to make it to the finals, Spike Lee and them will crash out hard. I'll
Oh
tell you
man,
that.
oh man, I, I hope that doesn't happen, man. I am notoriously anti-New York. Shout out to all my homies from New York. My wife's originally from, born in Brooklyn. Her family's all from Brooklyn, so
Okay.
no shade to New York, but New Yorkers a lot of times feel like they're the center of the world, and so when their teams are good, they're gonna let you know.
Mm,
So if the Knicks win a championship It'll be like the Dallas Cowboys winning the Super Bowl. That's like there's gonna be a lot of trash talk for a long time
Mm,
if Knicks were to win a championship. But I like Jalen Brunson, man. I like his game. Um, I like Bridges. I like the teams they put together. They just got to find a way to get over that hump. But I think Cleveland, with Boston, not having Tatum, and with Indiana not having Halliburton, I think this is Cleveland's shot, man. I think they have a great team. They were banged up in the playoffs last year, so I think
mm.
the East is really theirs to lose. And hopefully, my Hornets can take advantage of all the injuries in the East and get back into the playoffs.
I got Knicks coming out of the East. West, it's gonna be a crapshoot because it's like a death march over there with all the strong teams. So I don't know who's gonna come out the West, but the East for sure for me is Knicks. Now switching over to college. Now back when we were in college, we mentioned Steph Curry earlier. With college athletes back then, they couldn't get paid for making money for the schools and be able to make money off their name and image and likeness. But now they can. So this is a twofold question. What do you think about college athletes now being able to get a bag for making monies for the school? And then also number two, what was your first reaction when you heard that the GOAT, Hoodie, aka Bill Belichick, touchdown in Chapel Hill to become the next football coach at Carolina?
So with college basketball, it's such a different world than what we grew up with, man. And I've been watching UNC basketball since before I can remember. My first time really remembering watching UNC basketball was a '93 UNC championship team with Eric Montross and George Lynch. They beat Grant Hill on the senior night, went on to beat Chris Webber and the Fab Five in the national championship. And I still have the national championship T-shirt from '93. And my dad had the VHS, the commemorative VHS championship tape. And like that's I was 5 years old. That's when I fell in love with college basketball. And like UNC basketball is like I eat, sleep, and breathe it, man. I love it. And it's just so different now because for years it was you got juniors and seniors on your team, man. I mean, the '05 team, Raymond Felton, Sean May, juniors, that have been starters for 3 years. You got the '09 team with Ty Lawson, Wayne Ellington. They were juniors. Tyler Hansbrough was a senior. Danny Green was a senior. The 2017 national championship team, Justin Jackson, junior. Joel Berry, junior. Theo Pinson was a junior. So, like, we've had so many veteran teams that is so odd to be in this era now of one and dones and the transfer portal. I mean, UNC's got like two guys coming back from last year's team. So it's like you really don't grow with the team. That was one of the biggest kind of things I loved about UNC as opposed to like a Duke or Kentucky is like, our players felt homegrown. We felt like we grew up, we grew with our team, and there was that love and family there versus having to have a different team every year. But those days are kind of gone. I mean, even with Florida winning the national championship, their whole team was basically transfer portal guys. And so it's really, really important to have a great coach in place because you're having to develop guys and build a team on the fly. And how you play in January and February is far more important than how you play in November and December. I think that's one of the reasons you saw so many veteran coaches kind of, retire. Roy Williams kind of abruptly retired. Coach K had enough. Uh, you know, uh, there were so many. I mean, even younger coaches. Tony Bennett at Virginia decided to leave. There's so many coaches who it's just taxing on them because I mean, you have to recruit high school players, but you also got to recruit your own guys to make sure they don't hit the portal. So you got to worry about the playing time of these 18-year-old kids that were McDonald's All-Americans who want to go to the league after 1 year, and you also got to, worry about the guys you already have on your roster and make sure that they feel fed. So it's just a different beast, man. I don't know how any of these coaches do it nowadays, but the expectation for winning is still there. So it's just a completely different beast now in college basketball, and now you have the conference realignment too. So when we grew up, the ACC was like 10 teams. You played everybody twice.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was, but now it's like, I mean, next year, this coming season will be the first season in my lifetime where UNC and NC State don't play twice. They only get to play once on the schedule. So it's just a different animal than it used to be. We've lost kind of that regional aspect, and now there's talks that UNC might go to the SEC. And so it's just like, it's kind of lost its luster a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, things change and, money rules everything. And that's kind of, I don't have that much of a problem with players getting paid really at all because for so long, these colleges have been making a ton of money. off their name, image, and likeness for a long time. I think the transfer portal more than anything is the thing that they've got to get a handle on because a kid transferring 4 times in 4 years is just it's not conducive to the sport, and it's not good for the kid either because if you transfer to 4 schools in 4 years, you're not graduating.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to be some tweaks, and the NCAA has not had a history of being forward thinking. So it's the wild wild west right now, and I think more with time, things are gonna get these schools are gonna get more of a feel for things, and so hopefully the landscape of college sports will improve. But right now, it's definitely a little bit crazy out there. And as far as the hoodie, man, I thought it was just an interesting hire, man. Like I'm not a huge UNC football fan. I follow UNC football, but my dad, as an alum, he's locked in on UNC football. He was obviously not a huge fan of Mac Brown. um, and specifically constantly losing to NC State. It's just not a thing that flies in UNC. So I think Bill's gonna do a great job. He's done a great job with recruiting so far. He hit the portal hard. I think UNC's gonna have a solid year. The ACC is football wise is Clemson and everybody else. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what UNC football see what they're gonna do. But I definitely think they'll be an improved team. Definitely not gonna have situations like last year when we're giving up 70 points to James Madison. So those days are hopefully over. I think Bill's going to do a great job transforming the defense. And I don't know how long he's going to be there, but I feel like he's going to lay a foundation.
And it's funny to think, with Carolina, they have not won the ACC since '80 when Lawrence Taylor was suiting up for them. So that shows you how far in the doldrums Carolina has been on the football side and how basketball is pretty much Carolina's bread and butter. But you think about it, as you're a young recruit, you got the greatest modern day NFL coach come into your room. He just need to just sit down in the Super Bowl rings or probably FaceTime number 12 and say, hey, go to UNC. He'll get you right. And
And the talent is in the state, man. Like one of the number one things that one of these schools, whether it's UNC or NC State or Duke, they've got to they've got to find a way to land this in-state talent. North Carolina has plenty of talent. The
mm,
number one high school quarterback right now is at Grimsley High School,
mm,
and he's going to Tennessee.
oh, wow.
And even going back to Chris Leak. Chris Leak went to Florida when Joe Cox was at Independence. He went to Georgia. So
Mm,
our best talent is constantly leaving the state. And so
mm,
we can just find a coach who can just keep these players in house. I think it was Bleacher Report not too long ago did they rounded up all the NFL players and calculated which players were from which states had the most players in the NFL. And I think North Carolina was in like the top 6.
oh, wow.
And it's like we have that many players in the league, but we don't have any marquee programs.
Right.
And so if a coach can just find a way to just get the talent that's already in the state to stay here, then you're going to see a big change in college football. And I think that's one of the reasons why a move to the SEC would be beneficial for a UNC
Mm.
because you'll be able to use that SEC brand and be able to tap into the in-state talent that's already here.
Yeah, because I kind of think, like you said, the coaches of all the schools here, college-wise, need to follow the Howard Schellenberger philosophy, like when he did when he came to Miami. Just rope off Miami, keep your kids in state, and you could win.
Right.
Almost like with North Carolina, just rope off the triad, the triangle, and Queen City, and throw some 252 in there and some 828, and there you got it. And that's the one thing for me personally from the 252 side of the state. I'm glad that we're seeing a lot of kids from that side of the state start to get more recognition and talent because there's talent in the 252. But when you always think of North Carolina athletics, you tend to think of 704, 336, 910, and 919. And I think 252 has always been forgotten about. We had Peppers come through, Todd Gurley, the Kinston basketball pipeline with Jerry Stackhouse, Reggie Bullock,
Yep.
B.I., all those guys
Yep.
out there. Then Kobe White from Goldsboro, Jimmy Grahams from Goldsboro,
Right. And it's
and
like a lot of the cats you mentioned, like for basketball, they stayed in state. And
mhm,
so like if we can just find a way to do what we're doing with basketball, I mean the best players in North Carolina for the most part, they go to Chapel Hill or Duke or NC State. And so or Wake Forest, when Chris Paul went there. So we just got to find a way to keep our football talent in state, and you would definitely see some the in-state schools, really UNC is the best position program to do it. You can see them compete on a national stage if you can just keep the players that are already talented here from going to the SEC schools or the Notre Dames of the world.
Yeah, and I think Will Wade will surprise some people at NC State, coming off of their surprise Final Four run a couple years ago with Kevin Keats, DJ Burns, and those guys. And it was a great run because, I mean, you beat Duke to go to the Final Four, and us Tar Heel fans we were touching and agreeing that the sun would shine on the Wolfpack's backside and beat the Blue Devils. And that was like the best loss, in my opinion, that Duke has ever suffered, in addition to the retirement party at Cameron when Coach K and all the alums sat front row while we gave them that L.
Yeah, my man, that's the only time I've ever pulled for NC State, and probably the last time I ever pulled for NC State. But yeah, no, NC State. Will Wade is definitely he's come in with some fire. I think it's going to be great for the ACC for NC State to be good. I don't ever want them to be better than UNC. I don't think they ever will be better than UNC as a program.
Nope.
But the landscape of college sports, and specifically the ACC, is better when the triad basketball teams are good. When we were in the early 2000s, and when UNC had Felton, and Duke had Jay Williams, and NC State had Julius Hodge. Wake Forest had Chris Paul and Josh Howard. When those four schools were all competing on a high level and ranked every year, the ACC was the best conference in college basketball by a mile. And so, getting back to those programs competing on a high level is going to do wonders for the ACC, because right now it's Duke and UNC. The last 5 years have been just carrying the conference, and you see it in just the seeding. Like if UNC and Duke have more than 6 or 7 losses, you're going to be a 2 or 3 seed, because the ACC just doesn't command that same respect that it used to.
Now, do you think Coach Hubert Davis is on the hot seat this year after backdooring their way into the NCAA tournament last season and underperforming? And this year's class, kind of like you got some of your blue chips, but it's almost to where, for Carolina standards, it's like this ain't it.
No, I mean, Hubert is beyond on the hot seat right now. I mean, I think this is pretty much it. Like, if he can't win this year, they're going to look to go somewhere else. I mean, that's just how it is in Chapel Hill. Like, you got to win, or they're going to find somebody else. We saw with Matt Doherty. Matt Doherty won Coach of the Year his second year, and then he had the infamous 8-20 season. And even though he had a decent year the following year when he brought in Felton in May, it still wasn't good enough. Like, you got to win in Chapel Hill, period. The being an 8 seed and losing in the round of 64 is just not going to cut it. And you can't say that you're not bringing in talent. You have plenty of McDonald's All-Americans on that roster. So he's got to win. And, they hit the portal hard. They got a top 5 recruit coming in Caleb Wilson. I'm excited to see him play. You got Seth Trimble coming back. Big fan of his. So, it's kind of now or never, because you had a veteran team last year. You had a R.J. Davis coming off a All-American year. You had a veteran big in Baycott. And so, you got to find a way to win. I think he's been eating off of that Coach K farewell party for long enough.
Yeah.
I thought that Final Four run, that national championship run, kind of gave him some leeway for a little bit. But that's kind of soured now. You got swept by Duke last year, so it's you got to bounce back. Otherwise, the vultures are circling in Chapel Hill, most definitely.
Yeah, Hubert's on that last quarter now. If they do end up departing from Coach Davis after the season, do you think they'll stay within the Carolina family and maybe place a call to a Jerry Stackhouse or a VC or somebody within the family, or maybe go outside the Carolina family if they do decide to go that route?
I think you gotta branch away from the Carolina family a little bit, because especially now with the landscape of college basketball, being so much about hitting the portal, like, I think you just got to find someone who's has a proven pedigree, because I mean, even with State, going to get Will Wade, Wade's never won a national championship or anything, but he has a pedigree of getting programs to the NCAA tournament. And so, you've got to kind of get away from that, because there's not really a coach out there right now who's from the Carolina tree proven that's have proven success in college basketball year to year. So I
Mhm.
think and I don't think Hubert's done a terrible job. It just hasn't, when you're following legends like a Dean Smith and like a Roy Williams, you got to have consistency. And I think that's been the biggest problem with Hubert. You had the first year where you got to the national championship, and then you come in the following year with basically the same team, preseason number one, and you don't even make the tournament. And
Mhm.
year after that, you get a one seed, you win the ACC, but you lose in the Sweet 16. And then last year, you barely make it into the NCAA tournament. You get swept by Duke. So there's just not that consistency. Even when Roy wasn't having national championship teams, they were still competitive. And you can see the player growth year to year. We haven't even seen consistent growth from players. RJ had a great year and then a down year and then a great, so it's got to be consistency. I think that's really more so than anything else what UNC fans are looking for with
Mhm.
their head coach.
Yeah, the only concern I have if they were to go with somebody from the outside is that they won't have the respect of the tradition of a Carolina of what Al McGuire, Dean Smith, Bill Guthridge, Roy put down before. And the fan base would kind of be like, why are we bringing somebody outside? But hopefully, Coach Davis will prove us wrong and really do well. Now, switching gears to the pro side of things for football, the Carolina Panthers, they went 0-3 in the preseason, but from the flashes that Bryce Young showed at the end of last season, it's kind of giving people optimism that we can turn it around in Charlotte and possibly end the streak of not being in the playoffs and possibly push for a wild card spot. So, do you think that there's hope in Carolina for this season, or do you think maybe give Dan Morgan and Dave Canales another offseason and draft for really turning the corner?
I'm really high on the Panthers, man. I really am. I think Dave Canales has done a really good job. I think he's laid a foundation. I think we've seen Tepper kind of learn from his mistakes and kind of just be quiet and stay in the shadows and not make, rash decisions and let the coaches and the GM do their thing. I think the Matt Rule hire set the Panthers back several years. Not just because you gave him that big contract, but because Matt Rule never seemed to have a vision. Out the gate, you move off of Cam Newton, which at the time I didn't have a huge problem with because he was coming off the injury. But instead of just hitting the rebuild button, they go and get Teddy Bridgewater, who at the time was not objectively better than Cam Newton. And so then after that, you kind of hit the reset button again. You bring in Sam Darnold, and then you bring in Baker Mayfield. Like there was never a consistent vision, and the teams never had an identity. When you think about John Fox and Ron Rivera, those teams had an identity. They were going to play smash mouth football. They were going to run the football. Like that's what Panther football was all about. And so what I love about Dave Canales is that he has come in with a energy that has kind of given the team at least a sense of getting better every game. We saw the team get better. And then with Bryce Young, I was high on Bryce coming out of the draft, and I think with Frank Reich, he was just there was too many guys in his ear, and that first year was bad. It was just flat out bad, and I was out on Bryce, man. I just didn't feel like he was an NFL quarterback. He's already an undersized guy. And the one thing that we were told about Bryce was that he was great at processing. He was great pre-snap. He had some of those traits that we talk about with Tom Brady, and we just didn't see that in his rookie year. And so I think his benching last year was basically just the magic sauce, man. Like I think he did a great job of just taking it in stride, not being slighted by it, learning behind Andy Dalton, and you could just see it in his game, man. He got so much confidence back. And I really liked a lot of the moves that they made in the offseason, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. I love McMillan, the wide receiver. I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. Chuba Hubbard, solid player, man. Like I think he can be a Pro Bowl running back. You bring in Rico Dowdell from Dallas to be a number 2 running back. So I think they got great depth offensively. They just re-upped on Taylor Moton, so they got the offensive line solidified. And even the defense, man. The defense had massive struggles last year, obviously. But you get Derek Brown back healthy. They did a great job improving the secondary. The linebacking core is the big question. That linebacking core is on paper one of the worst in the NFL.
Right.
But you look at this. You look at the NFC South. It's it's Tampa, and then Atlanta. We don't really know about Mike Penix yet. The Saints are obviously completely rebuilding, really, with their quarterback situation, and so I think the NFC South is wide open. I would not be surprised if Carolina won the NFC South. I think that their floor is really 8 wins. I think they can be a 8, 9, 10 win team.
Hmm. And also, I think the sneaky pickup of getting Hunter Renfro will pay dividends. And there's also been talks. We're recording this interview on Saturday, August the 23rd, that the Vikings have inquired to us about possibly bringing back Adam Thielen since Jordan Addison is suspended 3 games and another one of their top receivers is undergoing surgery. Now, if you're Dan Morgan, do you pull the trigger and trade Thielen back to Minnesota if the price is right, or do you stand pat?
I mean, it depends on the price. I don't see the Vikings coming off a high pick. I would be shocked if they gave up more than like a fifth rounder because Adam Thielen's maybe got a year or two left in him. So you're not going to give up major draft capital for a veteran receiver that basically will be a 1 year rental. Um, I like Adam Thielen. I think he's a great veteran for that locker room. I mean, you look at the rest of the receiving core. Xavier Leggett's in his second year. Coker's, I think his third year, and then you got a rookie in McMillan. So I don't think it's a great idea to take a veteran out of that offense. I think that he's a great safety blanket for Bryce. So if I'm Dan Morgan, I'm not making a move. I think Adam Thielen, but I mean it really just depends on what Dan Morgan's objectives are for this season. If they're not necessarily thinking playoffs, if they're just trying to get better and be a more competitive team consistently, then yeah, you mean you get some draft capital and continue to build for the future. But I think the Carolina Panthers can be a playoff team this year, and I think Adam Thielen will be a big piece of that.
Right. And it also feels like that the rest of the league has caught up to the Chiefs, especially in that AFC West division with Pete Carroll coming back to the league, coaching Vegas, them picking up Ashton Jeanty, and you have Geno Smith at QB there. You got Bo Nix, year two in Denver. And then also in that division, you got Justin Herbert
Herbert.
with Coach Khakis, aka Harbaugh, and of course Greensboro native Keenan Allen is now back with the Chargers after a 1 year stay in Chicago.
Yeah, man. And I'm a born and raised Charlottean, but the Denver Broncos were actually my first love before the Carolina Panthers, and I get heat for that all the time. That I'm not a Panthers fan number one, but listen, man, Shannon Sharp, Terrell Davis, John Elway, Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey, Bill Romanowski, like the Denver Broncos in the '90s, man. That team was cold, man. And so I grew up loving that team. The first jersey I ever bought was a Clinton Portis 26 navy blue. Still got it. And so I'm a Broncos fan through and through, and was just so exciting last year to finally be back in the playoffs. Even though we got dusted by Buffalo, this is the first time we've had a quarterback that gave us some optimism since Peyton Manning retired. And
Mhm.
so I'm excited about what the Broncos can do. Obviously, great defense. Pat Surtain is my guy. Sean Payton, coach with pedigree, and you can just see it in just how teams have played the Chiefs, like specifically the AFC West, because the Broncos, we finally broke through and beat the Chiefs. They sat their starters in that last game, but we should have beat them in Kansas City. If our left tackle decided to block on the field goal in Arrowhead, we would have swept Kansas City last year. So,
Mhm.
and even when we didn't have quarterbacks, we were always playing Kansas City tough. And so you see even the Raiders last year beat Kansas City, and so you see teams. The mystique of the Chiefs has kind of lost some of its luster.
Mhm.
Philadelphia obviously wasn't afraid of them in the Super Bowl, and so specifically last year, it felt like the Chiefs won a lot of games because the other team just got tight down the stretch. We saw the Panthers take them to the wire,
Mhm.
and so the Chiefs won. I think they had the most one-score wins or last-second wins of any team or something like that. They were winning a lot of games just because Mahomes was great in the end, but I don't think they have a great football team anymore.
Mhm.
Chris Jones is still a great player, but Travis Kelsey, the wear and tear is starting to show. The offensive line is not what it used to be, and so the Chiefs still are going to be a Super Bowl contender because Andy Reid is there, Patrick Mahomes is there. As long as those two are there, the Chiefs are going to be in the conversation, just like with Belichick and Brady. But the the stranglehold that they had on the AFC, I think, is starting to come to an end, and the AFC is just the absolute just just bloodbath right now. I mean, if you got some competitive teams in the AFC West, but you also got the Bengals and the Ravens and the Bills, so and the Houston Texans with C.J. Stroud. So the Chiefs, I don't think can any longer just win games just off of hoping Mahomes saves them in the end. They gotta really play good football from start to finish now.
Yeah, because pretty much the Chiefs, I say they're pretty much are what the Patriots would have been if they were likable and media friendly
Yeah, they're definitely a
back
much
during
more
their
fun
run.
team.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're definitely a much more fun. They're incredibly fun to watch because Mahomes is just a different beast, man. He's gonna pull plays that you just where defenses are just scratching their head. But um, the NFL, you got to have a great team around you. We've seen a lot of great quarterbacks who have only won one Super Bowl, or I didn't even get to a Super Bowl that didn't have that team around them. So you got to have the coaching in place, you got to have the quarterback in place, but you got to have a well-oiled machine, and you got to have the development. That's why I'm so happy that the Broncos got a great coach in Sean Payton because we had some good coaches, uh, except for Nathaniel Hackett, of course,
Mhm.
and we just haven't had a coach with the kind of pedigree that you have to have. And right now, the AFC West has the best coaches in the league. We talk about Andy
Mhm.
Reid, Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and who am I missing? Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll. So
Reed,
you got
Carroll, Harbaugh, and Peyton. Yeah.
and Sean. Yeah. So you got three coaches that have won a Super Bowl, and John Harbaugh, who has been to a Super Bowl and won a national championship in college. So you
Mhm.
got you got four Hall of Fame caliber coaches. So it's gonna be fun to watch. It's gonna be I think the NFL season is gonna be exciting because you got a lot of teams now that have kind of put their hat in that can be Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, it's pretty much anybody's game, especially like you mentioned in the AFC. The Chiefs mystique is gone. It's almost like the scene when Rocky hit Drago and Drago got cut. Everybody in the NFL is like, the Chiefs got cut. We ain't scared of them. And I think it's going to be interesting to see who's going to come out of the AFC. And NFC, to me, is wide open to see who can out overtake Philly. Now, I don't know if anybody can overtake Philly because they're pretty much almost returning the same team. And if Nick Sirianni did not win that Super Bowl, I think he was probably going to get canned.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think Nick Sirianni hasn't gotten the credit he's deserved. He's been to the playoffs every year. He's been the head coach, and you've had some up and downs. They have some weird, little locker room things here and there. And he just is a different coach, man. He's gonna jaw with fans, and he's gonna, what I'm saying,
Mm,
go at it with the media. But I think the reality is, man, he's been one of the best coaches in the NFL since he's got to Philly, and
mm,
been to two Super Bowls with different coordinators, and Jalen Hurts still doesn't get the credit he deserves because he's got such a loaded roster around him. But man, he's such a great leader. He's got
mm.
that Tom Brady esque leadership to him, where he says all the right things in the press conference. He doesn't let the outside noise get to him. And I think, man, as long as Jalen Hurts is healthy, I I have a hard time believing anybody in the NFC. I mean, even if Saquon's not healthy, we saw the
Mm,
Eagles get to a Super Bowl and take Kansas City to the wire when they had Miles Sanders at running back. And
mm,
so you talk about you got two good receivers, good tight end, great offensive line, and that defense is a bunch of guys in their early 20s. So, like, they're going to be a tough team to beat, man. I think that they have to beat themselves because I just don't see a team in the NFC. I think the Rams could be interesting if Stafford is healthy.
mm,
That's a team that I think can make some noise, but I feel
mm.
like Detroit kind of missed their window. Green Bay could be interesting if Jordan Love can take that next step. But other than that, man, I just don't see a team in the NFC that can really, really threaten Philadelphia.
Yeah, you mentioned the Lions. Shout out to Hendon Hooker, I believe, alum of Dudley, backing up at in Detroit with Jared Goff, and then the GM of the Lions, Brad Holmes, A&T alum.
I didn't know Holmes was an A&T alum.
Yeah, it was an A&T alum. I think he spoke at this past year's commencement at A&T. Yeah, so he's an alum of A&T. Now, swinging over to the literary space, how did you come into being an author? What were some of the books that inspired you to get into that space? And then also, what's your take on the whole industry cashing in on nostalgia with X-Men 97 dropping and then bringing back the OG Power Rangers and kind of tying those storylines in, just seeing how our childhood is now nostalgia.
So being an author really kind of came about really late. Like I said, I went to school to be in the media, to be in the the film and TV and radio, you know, industry, and I had a radio show. I think you had one as well,
Mm-hmm.
WAG. Shout out to
Mm-hmm.
WAG. Um, did some Spartan TV, did some film editing. I did our step show videos back at G. So that was really where I kind of wanted to go. Um, and then the writing thing just kind of came about really right after I graduated, where I've always been a huge superhero nerd, man. Everybody who knows me knows, like, I grew up on Power Rangers, Batman, Ninja Turtles, X-Men. Like, that was my vibe, man. I love superhero stuff. And me and my older brother, we used to always come up with our own stories and our own characters. And I started coming up with a lot of ideas. Really, when I was in high school, was when I started coming up with my own kind of stories and things like that. But I didn't really do anything with them. And I had a couple of projects in script writing classes at G, where I kind of just took some small scenes from ideas that I had growing up, and I realized that I could maybe try putting those things on paper. And I was actually just graduated college, just trying to make ends meet. Was working as a movie theater manager back when they had the old projection booths that were not digital, and you had to stream up the film. And in between starting the movies, I was just like, let's try to put some of these ideas on paper, and started writing a book. And next thing I know, I had a full novel written. And then time passed. I kept writing stories, and met my wife, and she kind of encouraged me to keep pushing forward with it, and looked for literary agents. I think it was like a 2-year process of just getting a literary agent, and a 7-year process for getting my first publishing deal. And so it was a long time coming, but once I really started doing it, I really realized it was a passion. And I think I realized how much I loved reading after I started writing. And I realized once I graduated college and I started going out and reading books that I wanted to read, that I've always had a love for reading. I just didn't necessarily like reading books that someone made me read.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my first book that I really loved was Hatchet by Brian Paulson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember that book where
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
kid was
yeah.
stuck in the wilderness.
Oh yeah,
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 and then of
yeah,
course
yeah, yeah.
I grew up on like Animorphs, Goosebumps, loved those. And so being able to kind of tap into the science fiction genre was a passion of mine. Um, my book trilogy that's out now, the Clairvoyance trilogy, huge X-Men inspiration. And I essentially took Jean Grey's powers and split them up. So you have a character that can see the future, characters with telekinesis, characters that can read minds, and basically was able to take that aspect of like the psychic mutants and
Mm-hmm.
turn it into my own kind of story about a coming of age 17-year-old African American teenager. And one of the biggest joys of coming up with these stories was kind of putting my own stamp on the characters and my own stamp on the powers and how they worked, and kind of creating that lore of what these powers meant in this world, and creating those checks and balances of what characters can and can't do. It was just a really fun process. And working at a movie theater for so long, 'cause that was my first job in high school, was working at a movie theater, and being able to basically watch anything I wanted for free. I was able to soak up a lot of different influences, because first and foremost, I'm a movie buff. I love movies more than I love books. And obviously you want to see your books become a movie, but just being able to just create my own stories, and have them in a medium where other people can read them and enjoy them is just a blessing. And I honestly wish I had noticed it sooner. And I think that's why it's such a joy for me to kind of talk to really younger people, because my wife is a teacher, so I've had a lot of opportunities to go into classrooms. And you know when I walk in and I see black boys who are just like locked in and excited about uh just reading my novels, man, it just excites me, because we just didn't have that growing up. We didn't have, there were no influential black male authors, and there were no books with a black superhero at the forefront. And so, you're now seeing more of those books kind of come into fruition. But it's just really cool to see how much the industry has grown, and how many more people of color, and people of different walks of life are getting opportunities to tell their stories.
which is definitely dope and definitely great. You're probably gonna kill me for saying this and be like, "Oh, you're late on this." I'm just now watching the OG X-Men.
What? You talking
Yeah,
about like the
yeah,
original
yeah.
'90s?
Because I never really watched it in its original run. Because I only watched Fox Kids back in the day for Power Rangers, Beetleborgs, Mask Rider, Batman the animated series, and
So
Bobby's
yeah,
World. But never really
X Men was
was really
always
big on X-Men like that though.
X-Men was always the closeout. They always ended the Fox because it started at 8 a.m. and it ran till noon. And X-Men was always 11:30. And man, X-Men is my favorite. Batman is my favorite superhero. Period. Batman is my guy. I'm a Batman purist. But when it comes to Marvel Comics, X-Men is number one. A lot of people love Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man too, but X-Men was always my favorite because you have so many diverse characters and you have so many different plot lines that you can
Mm,
toy with. And I love the X-Men movies, the Hugh Jackman X-Men movies,
mm,
but I think they just dipped a toe into what the X-Men universe really is. I mean,
mm,
there's so many different ways you can have a full movie franchise and cinematic
mm.
universe just off of X-Men alone.
Right.
And I'm excited to see, what the MCU is going to do with X-Men whenever they bring X-Men into the fold fully.
Mm,
But yeah, seeing X-Men '97, man, I felt like that was just a love letter to the people who grew up watching that show. Because one of the things that I love the most about X-Men '97 is that it highlighted all of the characters. The X-Men movies were good, but it felt like Wolverine and the X-Men. It felt like the
right.
Hugh Jackman show, and Wolverine was always at the forefront. You know, they made Wolverine basically the leader in X-Men 3, and it was just
Mm,
like, Cyclops is a Boy Scout, but there's a reason Cyclops is the leader of the X-Men. And so
mm,
when you come into an X-Men '97 and you see Cyclops in his full glory, using his powers
mm,
in the way that he does, being a leader, you see Gambit and you see Rogue. You get to see all these other characters other than Wolverine.
mm,
Get to show how great they are, see how powerful Storm
right.
is. Like that was so great to see. And for me, man, like if the X-Men that they bring into the MCU is not like X-Men '97, they can keep it because like that's really the X-Men that I think fans want to see.
Right. And I also felt we were talking about Fox Kids that lineup is just on par with what Nickelodeon had in its peak run and what Cartoon Network had in its peak run. But to circle the Power Rangers, I felt that they dropped the ball with the movie where there was so much potential there, but it felt like they kind of messed some things up along the way because we kind of was teasing it at the end to bring Tommy in, but I guess because of the way that it performed, they scrapped it. But nothing can beat when Tommy put belt to butt and Green with Evil jumped into the Megazord, deboed him out the Megazord, and served him all the fade. And this was before he played his flute and brought the Dragon Zord out.
Yeah, man. Like I joke with my wife all the time that like my dream job is just being the guy in movie studios in their producers room who tells them, hey, that's a terrible idea. Like there's so many projects that get released and it's very obvious they didn't have enough people in the room who were fans of the original property.
Mm,
And that 2017 Power Rangers movie was a perfect example because you had a great cast, incredible cast.
mm,
All five main characters did an awesome job. All great actors. They've all done great things since. And to waste a cast of that magnitude, and it wasn't like that the story was bad. The story wasn't the problem. It's just there wasn't enough Power Rangers. You can't have a Power Rangers movie where they're only the Power Rangers for the last 10 minutes of the movie.
mm,
And so it's a coming of age story, which is cool, but that was 80% of the movie, and then at the end you got the Power Rangers. There's a formula of the Power Rangers that we all grew up on. They have their
mm,
little high school problems going on. They're building a parade float or whatever. Rita sends her monster down. They get smacked. They regroup. They come back, fold the monster, jump into the Megazord, and then fight. Take out the monster. And so when you don't have that formula, that's kind of what kind of turns people off. And so I think Power Rangers is definitely one of those properties that has a ton of potential. I don't know how familiar you are with the Japanese Super Sentai
mm,
series, but that's where Power Rangers is fed from, or if it feeds into Power Rangers because they use their footage first and foremost, and then they bring in our, the American actors, and nowadays there's more. The latter 10 years, I think, of Power Rangers, they use a lot more American footage because they have the budget for it. But when we were growing up, pretty much all of the fight scenes were the Japanese footage, and so I actually dabbled into the Super Sentai series right after college. I think is when I started watching the Super Sentai series,
Mm-hmm.
and their Power Rangers is not the same as our Power Rangers. Like it is a lot more geared towards teenagers. You're gonna have you're gonna have some cursing involved. You're gonna have a lot. You're gonna have character deaths, and so they really tap into that an anime feel. And so I think if especially now when you have older generations who have grown up with fans of Power Rangers, I think there's a lot of potential to kind of reshape the Power Rangers universe and still keep it for kids, but have it more so geared towards an
Right.
older fan base. And it's been really cool seeing Power Rangers because my son's 4 years old, and so he's just now getting into Power Rangers and rewatching some of the old shows, and he loves it. It's there's a reason why it was so successful. Like
Right.
you get with your friends and you pick out which color you're gonna be. It's definitely a franchise that has a lot of potential, but you have to have the right people in place when you're adapting something that's beloved from years ago.
Yeah, man, because I was the Red Ranger one year for Halloween. I had the poster. Amy Jo Johnson was my first crush starter kit back in the 90s, dog. And man, the playgrounds used to be lit. We'd be like, hey, I'm gonna be Power Rangers. I want to be the Red Ranger. Nah, I want to be the Black Ranger. Nah, I want to be the White Ranger. But Power Rangers, they were up there with Ninja Turtles, and that's another beloved property
Yep,
from our childhood, which I'm hearing they're going to the original content where when they did the comic books, they were a lot more darker, but they had to tone it down once they got put on TV. And then, fun fact, kids, James Avery, rest in peace, aka Uncle Phil, was the voice of Shredder in the TV
Shredder.
series.
Yep. Yeah, my son actually just got into Ninja Turtles. So my brother got the Shredder's Revenge Ninja Turtles game for Nintendo Switch, and my son started to play it. My son's already an early gamer. He loves Ninja Turtles. He loves Mario Kart, and I told him, hey, there's a TV, there's a cartoon, and we started watching it, and he sings the theme song like he loves it. And Ninja Turtles is one of those things that like no matter how old you get, it's easy to tap into because the turtles themselves just have a great vibe, and they're such fun characters to kind of just watch, and you figure out which Ninja Turtle you are, and it's an easy thing to redo and get right because if you just keep the Ninja Turtles and the essence of those characters, Michelangelo being the party guy, Raphael being the kind of the snarky bad boy, Leo being the leader, Donatello being the smart one. If you get the essence of those characters right and their dynamic and their chemistry right, it's
Mhm.
you've already solved most of your movie right there. So I think Ninja Turtles is definitely one of those things, and they're apparently making the last Ronin movie, which is
Mhm.
the comic book arc where three of the turtles have died off, and there's only one last one left.
Mhm.
Um, it's a bit of a darker story, but I'm interested to see what they do with that.
Yeah, then I also read too that next year they're going to be re-releasing in theaters Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze for its 35th anniversary. And for you, those of you that don't know, the first two movies, they were shot in and around the Wilmington area. And then Super Shredder
I didn't know
in
that.
Ninja Turtles 2 was played by a pre-Big Daddy Cool Diesel, Kevin Nash.
I didn't know that. I did know that. Yeah, those movies, man. The original Ninja Turtles movies have a special place in my heart. Shout out to Vanilla Ice, Go Ninja
Yes,
Go.
Ninja
We
Rap.
all did the dance.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we all did the dance, man. Those are just fun movies, man. And what's interesting about the genre of just superhero movies is that I think we're coming out of that we have to make our movies serious kind of age. And I
Mhm.
think you really saw it with the new Superman movie where it's like you can have some serious some serious undertones, but like you don't have to sap all the fun out of your movie. You can have some jokes here and there. And the DCEU, it was it was there were some good movies in there, but I think overall like the tone was just a little too serious, especially with Superman. He's supposed to be a more lighthearted character. And seeing us get back to the colorful costumes and instead of everybody wearing black leather, I think it's great for especially millennials and us watching, going back to the movies. But
Mhm.
I think it's going to allow people to kind of bring back into that, taking your kids to see a superhero movie kind of day and age.
Yeah, speaking of Ninja Turtles, Ernie Reyes Jr., who played Kino in Ninja Turtles 2, was the stunt Ninja Turtle for Donatello. And I
Yeah,
was
I
thinking,
remember. Yeah, I knew that.
yeah, because I was thinking, I'm like, yo, he would have been perfect for a Power Ranger.
Yeah, and I think
Think,
a lot of those martial arts actors did cross mingle in a lot of different shows and things like that. That's and we all grew up wanting to know karate, and it was because of Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers and things like that. And there's so much more content out for kids these days. We had
mm,
Nickelodeon and
Disney
Fox Kids,
Channel, Fox Kids,
but
I'm,
nowadays these kids they got shows on Netflix, they got shows on Hulu, they got shows on Disney Plus. They got so many different shows that they can tap into, man. So um, it's really interesting to see, man, because like my son has like 6, 7 different shows that he's a huge fan of, and we just had our two networks, and we didn't have no DVR or streaming. So if
nah,
you weren't home,
nah,
when
you
that bus
missed
came
it.
through, you had to sprint. You had to sprint to get back to the crib so that you wouldn't miss Power Rangers.
Yeah, man, especially like Nickelodeon had it on lock back in the day with Snick and with all the
Yep.
contests they had, Nick to take over your school,
Nicktoons.
Super Toy Run, and to just think about it, they were smart to get us hooked early to where, we're lifelong customers of Nickelodeon, seeing the retro tees of all the old school Nickelodeon characters and just how, like you mentioned with Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles, how we grew up with those properties as kids and now we're able to introduce that property to a newer generation, but at the same time tapping in on the days before adulthood came through and said, "Forget your fort," like Snoop did in Baby Boy. You know what I'm saying? Which is dope and which is good at the same time. But I want to get your
Yeah,
take.
and I
Go
mean,
ahead, go ahead, go
I was
ahead,
gonna
go
say,
ahead.
that's kind of why I became an author, just being able to tap into that love of those superhero genres growing up, and being able to kind of be able to create my own superheroes, and really have that kind of Saturday morning energy for a new generation, man. Because
Mm,
there's not a lot of new superheroes nowadays. We're kind of
right.
all just recycling, even with the movies. We just see reboot after reboot after reboot,
Mm,
and I think there's a lot of with Hollywood, because they put so much money into these movies. I think it was kind of this fear of trying new things.
mm.
But there's a lot of content out there, specifically when it comes to novels and comic books. There's a lot of really talented uh, there's a lot of really talented African American LGBTQ writers who are coming up that have put out some amazing content. And that's one of the greatest things about being able to go to book events and things like that and conventions and network with other people, because there is a whole just slew of original characters and content that haven't even been tapped in yet.
Mm.
And I think once we start embracing newer stories, I think you'll see just kind of a revitalization of that genre, because you can see it with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That they're not the movies aren't making the money that they used to, because there is a little bit of kind of superhero fatigue, because we're doing a lot of reboots and we're doing things that we've kind of already seen. And so I think if we can tap into some new original stories from people who haven't had the spaces to tell those stories, I think it can really just take really all mediums, whether it's TV or movies, it can take them to another level.
Yeah, and it got me thinking back to where you mentioned how now there's more space for everybody to come to the table and to write their stories and see themselves in the stories. It got me thinking, back in the day we were kids, you had Meteor Man, Up and Away, both of those were Robert Townsend projects. Then of course Static Shock. That they were all kind of ahead of the curve where like how you mentioned back then, we didn't really have those spaces to where you had for us, by us, and now kids do.
Yeah, most definitely. Like even with Miles Morales, having his animated movies, those are some of the best superhero movies ever made, with the Into the Spider Verse movies. And so We didn't have a Miles Morales growing up, and so when your kids want to be Spider-Man and they want to wear the black suit, it means a lot. And on top of also having a Black Panther that you can look up to, and so it's just really cool to see the new spaces for people of color and people in the LGBTQ community being able to have avenues to tell their stories. Because listen, man, like I don't have a problem with them replacing a long held white superhero with someone of color to try to get other people representation. But I want to see new characters. I want to see new heroes. It's cool to have Superman and Batman and Thor and all these characters be them,
Mm.
and bring in new characters from different avenues that can. Because I mean, look at Black Panther. Black Panther was the highest grossing Marvel movie before Avengers Infinity War came along, and that wasn't just black people going to see it, right? It was people from all walks of life, because you have the foundation of the MCU. People
Mm.
were familiar with the MCU. You introduced the Black Panther character in Captain America: Civil War, and so you got audiences familiar with this character. So it wasn't like a property where it's like, oh, this is only for black people.
Mm.
This is for everybody. It's a black story, but this
Right.
is for everybody, and that's why one of the things that I try to accomplish with my books, with the Clairvoyant series, yeah, it's a 17-year-old African American teenager as the forefront, but there's diverse characters all over the place. You've got representation from a lot of different communities, because it's not necessarily an African American story. It's a story for everybody. It's just we are at the forefront, and that's important, because everybody wants to be able to see themselves in characters, but you don't have to do that and exclude communities as well. You can have projects, because you know when we were younger, we didn't care if Batman was white. Batman's a cool character, you know. Batman's a cool character in his own right, and we can latch on to characters because they're interesting. And so
Mm.
I think having characters with with minorities and things like that at the forefront allows representation, and also allows people from marginalized communities to have those spaces to get the same opportunities as these creators, like the white creators who have been writing for years and have been able to build success and wealth in these industries. Being able to have us have control over some of these things too, having black producers, having black directors. That's why
Mm.
it's so cool to see Ryan Coogler doing his thing with Black Panther and doing his thing with Sinners. It's like you're now seeing more people of color and people in these spaces get opportunities because they've had the opportunities to do a movie like Black Panther.
Mm. Now, what's your take on MK2 coming out in October and the 2021 MK movie that came out? For me, it was definitely better than Annihilation, and I liked the 2021 movie because we got fatalities. And I was shocked to find out the storyline origin of Scorpion and Sub Zero. And I was like, you mean to tell me I've been cheering for the wrong guy my whole life and pumping quarters and playing the wrong guy, where I was supposed to be playing with Scorpion cheering for him and Sub Zero was actually the bad guy?
Yeah, no, that was one of the first movies I saw when the movie theaters opened back up after the pandemic. Was Mortal Kombat. Me and my brother went and saw it, and yeah, it was a fun movie, man. It was really fun to just see the reimagining of Mortal Kombat. Excited to see what they're gonna do. They're bringing in Johnny Cage, who's obviously a fan favorite character. I just like their take on it. I think it's a cool take on it. Excited to see what characters they're gonna bring in. Definitely a fun movie franchise, and they're also making they're making a Street Fighter reboot as well. I know they just got Cody Rhodes tapped to play Guile, I think.
Yeah.
And so yeah, no, so that they're tapping into some projects, and they're bringing back some things that were done in the '90s that might not have been the best projects. We loved them because we were kids, but
Mm.
they didn't necessarily have the financial backing or the budget behind them to really make a great movie. So yeah, man, I'm excited to see what they're doing. And video game movies used to be dead in the water, like they just weren't going to be good. And so now you're starting to see more creators and studios just tap into the right people and put the right people in charge to make these projects the best they can be.
Yeah, because we saw Nintendo held off for decades after that 94 Mario Brothers flop, which I rented. I didn't necessarily like. R.I.P. Bob Hoskins, shout out to John Leguizamo, and how the Super Mario Brothers movie became a big hit. And now they really got a chance to expand that universe there. Sonic, big hit there. And it just seems like when I went to go see Sonic, right? And to see the kids with the Sonic dolls, I'm like, y'all weren't alive when you had to turn the TV on channel 3 and then hear Sega before Sonic 2 started up. Y'all, this ain't for y'all. This ain't for y'all.
Yeah, well, it's funny because my son actually has a Sonic stuffed animal that he sleeps with. So, like, yeah, man. But it's cool in a way because you're seeing your kids love the same things that you grew up loving. And so, like, as soon as my son was able to walk, I was putting him on to Batman and Power Rangers and
Mm,
just gauging to see how much he loved it. And you
mm,
know, we have matching Power Ranger shirts. We got Power Ranger masks that we put on and play Power Rangers with. And
mm,
so it's really cool to see the younger generation kind of embrace these things and
mm,
to see studios kind of not just go back and revisit these characters and
mm,
revisit these properties, but
mm,
put the right people in charge to
mm.
make sure that they capture the same essence of those characters. Because
Right.
that's the best thing about these Sonic movies is, you remember when the first Sonic trailer dropped, everybody was like, that does not look anything like Sonic. And what did they do? They went and changed it.
We bullied them,
And that
we
was the best,
pressured them
best
into
decision.
doing it right.
Right. And it was the best decision they ever made because the movie was a huge success and they built a whole franchise off of it. So, and then with the Super Mario Brothers movie, that was one of my son's favorite movies for a long time. We watched that movie like 2 or 3 times a week because he loved that movie.
Yeah, I may have to
And to see
run
that
that
movie
back.
and yeah, no, it's a great movie, man, and it has so much nostalgia packed into it. Where if you play the games, man, there's so many references to Mario games. They did a great job capturing that essence of Super Mario Kart, and
Mm,
so it's really cool to see not only these projects coming out, but to see them actually get the property right and get the essence of these characters and the essence of what made these games and these shows so fun when we were kids.
right. And speaking of Mario Kart, have you given your kid that work in Mario Kart yet?
I have not because my son just like he just turned 4 in May, and he really started playing Mario Kart when he was about 3 and a half, and like he can literally play on his own. Like and the first time he got first place, he wasn't even 4 years old yet, and I remember I took a video and I sent it to my brother and I was like, bro, do you see this? And so I'm letting him enjoy himself right now. I don't want to shatter his dreams just yet. Now once he gets to that hard difficulty and he starts getting in the place in the top five, or if he starts talking junk, then I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to humble him a little bit. But until then, I'm gonna let him build his game up and enjoy having his time and because just when we were kids, our parents weren't able to smash us in video games. So
No.
I want him to be able to have his moment and build his own repertoire when it comes to video games.
Yeah, and it's crazy with gaming how young kids game and how Fortnite is very big, how video gaming now is a communal experience where
Yeah.
back in the day, the only communal experience we had with video games was either at the arcade or somebody had that multi-tap and
Bubba Kid Crib.
everybody bought the controllers, brought their memory cards, and you got busy.
Yeah, most definitely, man. And it is cool to see that community built. But me, man, I still love just kind of playing solo. Like I think that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge gamer anymore. I think
Mm,
I'm just more into just the solo gaming. But my older brother is a huge gamer, and since I had kids, I don't even have the time to like I don't have a current gen system. I think I like the newest gen system I have is a Nintendo Switch. So
mm.
like it's you work a full time job and you got kids and you're an author. It's kind of hard to get the time to game. So I still play a lot of the old school stuff. I still have my PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360 hooked up. So if I got time, I'll hook those up. But yeah, man, it's just great to see my son kind of embracing those things and being good at it at an early age.
Yeah, which is definitely dope, and it's great to see with football back into space, and they're talking about bringing back college basketball now with the whole name,
Yeah,
image, and likeness thing, and which is
I saw
dope,
that.
and it just feels great now that they're remastering a lot of the older games from when we were kids on newer gen consoles to where I can finally put belt to butt to somebody in Marvel versus Capcom 2. Ryu, BB Hood, and Gable. That's my top three. Look up my PSN screen name if you want to get that work. All right. But another thing I want to get you out on before we wrap, with on the music tip, how when we were coming up, music was more of you had to sit and listen because you were making mixtapes off of the radio. You had to go on to that Piff or any other website to download it or go to a store to get it. Whereas now it's all on the cloud via stream, and you don't have that investment of I'm gonna pay my hard-earned money. Go to Walmart, Kmart, Tower, Camelot, Peaches, Blockbuster Music, Record Authority, or any other record store, and just getting that music. So, what's your take on the change of how we've consumed music, and does music now, you think, in your opinion, have that same meaning to today's generation of kids?
It's I think music more than any other medium is so generational when it comes to what you like and what you think is good. I think everybody can go see a Superman or a Fantastic Four, and no matter what age you are, you can get the same enjoyment out of it. Music is not like that anymore, and you just look at the double XL freshman class every year. It ain't it don't hit the same. And I think one of the things is music when we were coming up felt I think artists felt more unique. I think because of the desire to make money, I think you've seen a lot of I think you've seen the industry kind of try to replicate the same thing over and over again. And so
Mm,
even when you do have rappers who are pretty good, like the sound just ain't isn't doesn't really feel distinctive enough. And when, like even in the early 2000s, man, 50 Cent, Ja Rule, Eminem, Kanye, Jay Z, like Lil Wayne, they all sound completely different rhyme styles, completely like none of their styles are remotely the same. And nowadays, it feels like everybody's trying to replicate the same style. So even when you do get a new artist out, I can't tell the difference unless you tell me who it is. And I think that uniqueness about specifically hip hop is what we're kind of lacking. And even with R&B, it's kind of the same thing too, where it's just like everybody kind of tries to make the same type of music. I think that's why it's really cool when you have artists come out that feel like something you haven't seen before. I pretty much never listen to the radio. like I've never listened to the radio. I pretty much get new music when it's suggested to me by Spotify. Like so, when I discover a new artist, I really try to latch on to them, and I listen to a lot more underground stuff, a lot more. You know, I think the most mainstream person I'm gonna listen to is probably Kendrick. And
mm.
so you don't have more distinctive sounds. I think it, it makes for an industry that. Oops, sorry about that.
You good?
It makes for an industry that just doesn't have the same. It just doesn't hit the same as it used to.
Yeah, it just doesn't, man. Because like referring back to our college years at G, it was a time to really be listening to music because a lot of those songs that were out when we were in college are classics now. Think of T-Pain's Run, Chris Brown's Run, Atlanta Snap, Crunk. I mean, we got to see it all, and now it's being loved and appreciated to where you got Ying Yang twins making ladies pop and twerk at SeaWorld.
Yeah, that's it's crazy to think that that's old school music, but like the kids in college weren't born when when Kanye's albums first dropped. When College Dropout first came out, they weren't. It was like they weren't. That's crazy to think about. But yeah, man. I mean, I think that plays into a little bit too. Why you don't see like the club scene is not the same as it used to be because the music industry just doesn't feel as distinctive as it used to.
Nope, because kids nowadays, if they heard Nucky If You Buck, they would not survive in the club or be a beer or any other ATL crunk record. Because like when I first heard Nuck If You Buck drop in the Knuckles trailer, I was like, okay, somebody was in the room that was at a club or somebody's teen club back when Nuck If You Buck was out. Because as soon as them snares hit, somebody was gonna start fighting or a chair was gonna get thrown.
Yeah, and that's one of the funniest things about getting old is like the BET Awards this year was completely tailored to us.
Yes, it
Like
was.
it was completely tailored to our generation. And even the Super Bowl halftimes a couple of years ago when they had Dr. Dre
Hmm.
and 50 and Eminem and Mary J. Blige come out, like we are now at the generation where we are the target because we
We're
are
the
the
adults now.
adults. So we are the target demographic for a lot of things, and that's cool to see. But yeah, man, it's gonna be interesting to see where the music industry is years from now because there's just not this embracing of uniqueness.
Yeah, because who would have thought when we were kids in 92, 93 that Dr. Dre, Snoop, Ice Cube would be beloved by middle America? You know, Busta Rhymes just recently got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And, you
Right.
know, last year's Super Bowl with Kendrick, Serena Williams had the sea walk on him. And we're like, oh, she just did a whole sea walk on the Super Bowl halftime. And Snoop wore a whole crip ensemble on the Super Bowl
You're right.
stage, which is wild.
I mean, even like you could have never even imagined. You do you remember like when we first I think it was our I want to say my freshman year in college. It was the Super Bowl with the Colts and the Bears. No, that was Prince did that halftime show. But
Yeah,
I
the
think the
Prince.
halftime before that, the halftime before that was like Bruce Springsteen or something like
Oh yeah, yeah.
right after the whole Justin Timberlake Janet Jackson fiasco
Mm,
with the Panthers Patriots Super Bowl. They went for years where they were just giving us old white rockers. And
mm,
it was Rolling Stones, it was U2, it was Bruce Springsteen,
mm.
it was Paul McCartney, and you wouldn't I would not believe at that time that decade later the NFL would put Dr. Dre and Snoop on an NFL halftime.
Mm-mm. No.
But that's where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, Snoop, he said it ain't no fun if the homies can't have none. The while he's now saying it ain't no fun if nobody can't have none. And to just think how some of those songs back in the day would definitely not fly now, but it was like misogyny at its finest, especially when you were at those dances. You see a nice little young girl, you were like, definitely don't do this now, fellas. You would just see a nice little lady get behind her, she'll turn and give you that look. And that look felt like an eternity, boy.
Yeah, that's not how the club is now. It's definitely
No,
not like it is now.
no, yeah, that era, and then the back of the bus on the activity bus. Definitely can't do that now. So it's just crazy to think how a lot of that behavior was normalized back then. But of course, now when it flies. So it's kind of great to see now that the young college students of today are pretty much taking the approach of safety first, respecting others. And one last thing I want to get you out on. To me, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel that A Different World has garnered more of an appreciation now than it did in its original run with the HBCU tours that they've been doing. Kadeem Hardison being cast on to Shy as a professor, which to me was like a nod to his Dwayne Wayne character after he got that Konnichiwa suit and was whining and begging like Key Sweat for Whitley to not marry Papa Pope, formerly known as Byron Douglas, and got his stuff together. To me, that was the biggest come up ever in TV history. When Whitley saw Dwayne Wayne in that suit after that
At
Kanishiwa
the wedding.
internship,
Yeah.
she was like, "Oh, this the same Dwayne Wayne with the flip up shades." So, what's your take on A Different World now getting this appreciation, and we're seeing a show like Grownish pretty much is like the different world for this young generation, pretty much paying tribute to that.
Yeah, I think we lived in the golden age of black television
Mm,
because the 90s and early 2000s when you had UPN, and you also had Living Single and Martin on Fox, and you had Fresh Prince on NBC. Like we really grew up in an age where multiple networks had multiple black shows with different creatives behind it, And so like Different World was really ahead of its time, man. Like to have a show about kids at an HBCU and have this ensemble cast of characters, like it was really really ahead of its time. And it's honestly a little strange that we haven't gotten back to that, because you're seeing more people in industries get more representation. The fact that we haven't really had, I mean, Tyler Perry's pretty much running BET's television department. So it's like
Mm.
we don't have those different creators making different content. And so, I would love to see more shows, um, more just positive black shows, on TV, and
Mm.
more sitcoms, uh, because we had so many great influences television wise
Yeah,
when we were
and
coming up,
yeah, and also in
and
Living
Different World was
Color.
definitely a part of it.
Yeah, Living Color,
Yeah.
and also shout out to Robert Townsend with Parenthood, Hollywood
Yep.
Shuffle, and just all
Jamie
the
Foxx show.
representation. Jamie Foxx show. It was
Yeah, yeah,
a
man. We
great
had.
golden age of black TV, and we could just sit and watch. And also, Sparks was on UPN, and for those that don't know, Miguel A. Nunez Jr., who's a North Carolina native from Wilson, he was actually in the pilot episode for a show called Dino Man, which they later ended up pitching as Power Rangers some years ago before
I
it
did know that.
you
Yeah,
did
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've actually seen the pilot of that. That's actually it's from a Super Sentai show that came out right before Power Rangers. It was almost like they tested the market with for Power Rangers, but it didn't quite hit the same. So then they waited a year. But
Mhm.
I think that they waited for the right time, because I think it was the infusion of not only you had the characters in colored spandex, but when you threw the dinosaurs in there, because dinosaurs was that was it when we were kids, man. You had Jurassic Park come out, you had Land
Mhm.
Before Time. So I think the combination of the superheroes and costumes plus the dinosaurs was like the perfect sauce for Power Rangers to jump off.
Yeah, and it popped off like game busters too. I mean, like we talked about it earlier, from the bed sheets to all the merch, and they
Yep,
made money off of us, man. They
they
really
did.
did. They really did. And like I said, hopefully they'll do this reboot right. And which was why I liked when they did Power Rangers Always and Forever, because they kept it true to the OG storyline. You had Zach and Billy in there, and they got a paying tribute to Trini as her
Hmm.
daughter is portraying her as the
Yeah.
Yellow Ranger. So they really kept it true to the OGs. So I'm really glad about that. So current projects, shout outs you want to give, plug your socials.
So yeah, follow me on socials. Be More the Auteur on Instagram. Be More the Author on Twitter and Facebook. I still call it Twitter. I'm not gonna call it X. And I'm currently going to a lot of different book events. I'll be at Bookapalooza coming up in October here in Charlotte. Um, Pubbing this Clairvoyance trilogy. Book 3 is going to be out soon. Um, I'm also working on some other projects as well, so hopefully I have some new books out in the next year or two. Uh, and also follow me on TikTok as well. Be More the Author. I'm back to doing my movie reviews. Uh, I used to do movie reviews when I was working at the movie theater, and I was a manager at the movie theater, and a lot of people were hitting me up to get back into it, but I had kids. But now that my kids are getting older, I'm able to go out and see movies again. So I'm back on my movie reviews. So definitely follow me on TikTok as well.
Yeah, follow my all the socials. Get the books you need to read in your life. You need it more than like you needed those booking certificates back in the day. If you know, you know. And you can follow this podcast wherever you stream and on the official YouTube channel at youtube.com/beyond the album cover. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big thank you, round of applause for my guy, my fellow UNC-G alum, Brady Moore. Brady, thank you for coming on the podcast, and you're welcome back anytime, good sir.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Yes, sir.